Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Diamond and today we're going to be talking about my top 10 favorite books of 2023. Now if you can't tell, I'm super excited because as you can see in the background, I did get my bookshelves in. For the longest time I've had bare walls and my Peloton just sitting in the background of my videos, but now I have bookshelves. And so I took all of my books out of storage, like the little closet under my stairs, and now I can go through them and actually put them on my shelves. Now compared to a lot of other creators and readers out there, I did not read a lot. I am just getting back into reading. I would say like the end of 2022 into the beginning of 23. So I did not read a lot. But I did read, so that's always a good thing. So let's just jump right into it. Okay, so we're on the floor and let's just get started. So I am starting with my number one favorite book of 2023, which was Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. So if you do not know, I am an aspiring author and I am currently writing a adult fantasy book that I hope to get traditionally published within, the next year or two. I do have some videos all about my outlining process and some writing vlogs, so if you want to check that out, I have a whole playlist. I'll link it. And needless to say, when I was in the research phase of planning to write this book, I came upon Brandon Sanderson's lectures and I just really loved how he taught and talked about fantasy writing. So I wanted to read Mistborn and it did not disappoint. So within the Mistborn world, there are basically two groups of people. There are the Ska, who are like slaves. They are treated terribly. And then there are the nobility, who are of course above the Ska. And within the nobility, there are people called Mistines and people called Mistborns. Now Mistines have access to only one type of power, while Mistborns have access to all of the powers. And the magic system is based on metals. So for example, 10, if you have access to the power 10, then your senses are enhanced, and so on. So there's iron, pewter, just a bronze, there's a bunch of metals that give people powers, but only the nobility, the Mistines and the Mistborns, have access to those powers. And then above all, there's the Lord Ruler. And the Lord Ruler is the scary man, right? He is the oppressor. Really nobody likes him. The Ska really don't like him and the nobility don't. So basically the story really follows a young orphaned girl who's also a thief, then how she discovers that she has these Mistborn powers, and she joins a group of more experienced thieves, and they hatch this plan to overthrow the Lord Ruler, basically kill him and take over the city and flip the balances of not having the Ska enslaved and bringing wealth to the city that they're in. So that's basically Mistborn. So I absolutely love Mistborn. It was my top read of 2023. The story was just so good. I do not like the 5-star rating system. It kind of just doesn't make sense to me. Like, how am I supposed to go from a 1, which is like I hated it, to a 5, which is like I loved it, like that. There's only 4 notches in between 1 and 5, and I can't put in words, I can't narrow down how much I liked a book into the 5-star rating, so I don't really do that. But I can tell you that the plot of this book was so good. The twists and the turns and the red herrings and stuff, they were really unexpected, and that's something I love. I love when I'm like really immersed in a book and I can't tell what's gonna happen next, so that was Mistborn. The next book that was in my top of 2023 was Delicious Monsters by Lascelles Sandberry. If you do not know, if you have not been on my channel, you know that I love Lascelles. I have never met her in my life, but I truly love her. She is also on YouTube. She is a traditionally published Black author in Canada, and I believe this is Delicious Monsters is her, I want to say her 3rd or 4th book, but this is the first book that I've read from her, and I absolutely loved it. It is more of like a horror thriller kind of book. So Delicious Monsters follows two timelines and two different girls, and the timelines are 10 years apart. So the older timeline, we follow Daisy, who sees dead people. Yes, Daisy sees dead people, and she's kind of really, it affects her, you know, seeing dead people really affect her. So we follow her timeline. Her mom, her and her mom get inherited a mansion from like their rich uncle, and so they go to live there because it's a great opportunity. The mom wants to turn into a bed and breakfast, but when they get there, of course, it's a creepy mansion, you know, and she already sees dead people. So mansion plus her seeing dead people equals there's a lot of horror and like creepy stuff going on. And then fast forward 10 years, we follow Brittany, who is a YouTube videographer, I would say. You know, she has like a YouTube channel that does documentaries on scary and horror things. So Brittany, 10 years later, is investigating all the creepy, scary things that have happened at the mansion that Daisy and her mom used to live in. And so the book really just intertwines, and it shows Daisy's perspective of actually living in the house, the things that happened to her, the story behind the mansion and everything. And then it follows Brittany kind of uncovering the pieces and talking to people 10 years after all the craziness happened. I absolutely love this book. I wouldn't say I'm a horror person. I'm more of a thriller girl. Before, when I used to read, I was really into thriller. This year I kind of went into fantasy, but this book was so good. The next book on my top 10 is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Again, I know she's famous for Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows. I haven't read those yet. I know. I really do want to. This is the first book that I read of hers, and I loved it. I really loved it. Now, I will say that when I first was reading it, I wasn't sold. So within Ninth House, we follow the story of Alex, who, I'm just now realizing this, but Alex can also see dead people. So these two books, I don't know what was going on with me, but like seeing dead people was a trend for me in 2023. But for Ninth House, we do follow Alex, who is like a scrappy, down on her luck. She's had a hard life, so she's dropped out of school. She's really lost in life, and a representative from Yale University is like, hey, we kind of know that you can see dead people, so we want you to come to Yale, go to the school actually, but the catch is that you have to join one of our secret societies. So Yale apparently has a bunch of secret societies. I want to say, I'm gonna get this wrong, but let's just say they have like 10 secret societies that all dabble in a different type of magic. And so the society that Alex is joining is the one that oversees the societies and makes sure that they're in line and that they're not doing a lot of extra stuff, you know. There are like rules and regulations when it comes to the secret societies. So Alex goes there, and of course things start going wrong. There are monsters coming out. One of her only friends gets lost in some kind of dimension, and the book is all about her really trying to uncover what are these secret societies really doing here, you know, like what's really happening with these secret societies. And she is of course an outsider, so she takes a different approach to finding out what's really going on. But absolutely love Ninth House. I will say that right after I read it, I love the writing. Let me say that. I love the writing. I love the story. I loved everything about it. But I felt like the magic lacked a little bit. Like the magic, like, okay, let me explain. The magic system in this was so cool. Okay, like there were some societies who could open portals to other places and just do really cool stuff, and I felt like we didn't get a lot of the magic in this, but then I found out that it's a duology, or like a series. There's gonna be a second book, and then going back and looking at it, I was like, oh, okay. Now I can see why she was just like teasing the magic, because I wanted more of it. So that was my only gripe about it, is that I wanted more magic, but I'm sure we'll get more magic in Hellbent. The next book of 2023 was Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This was a book club read and I liked it. It's in my top favorites. This one follows, this is definitely a thriller, which is really what I'm used to reading. And I liked it. It follows a woman named Jen who is in her late 30s. And one night she witnesses her son murder somebody on their front lawn. He stabs them, kills the person, and yeah, he goes to jail. And then the next day she wakes up and it's the day before. So today her son murders the person, she goes to sleep, wakes up, and it's the day before that happened. And so the whole book is told in that kind of reverse order. Every day that Jen wakes up, it's the day before, or even sometimes it's like a week before, a month before. And so she kind of has to like keep traveling back in time and piecing together clues as to why her sweet little son murdered somebody on their front lawn. It was really a good story. It was really tapped into how like a mom's love is the strongest thing on earth, and I think the twists were good. I did guess some of them, but it was like really fast paced and I read it within like 2 days probably. Okay, so this next top favorite of mine for 2023 shocked me because I am totally not a romance person. It was a romance book. It is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. When I tell you, I do not read romances. I'm not a romance girly. I don't know what that says about me, but I just find them so predictable and like so cheesy. If you know a good romance book, please let me know in the comments, because I do want to try new genres, but I'm just not into them. But this was the right amount of cheese. It just got me. I don't know. It just got me and I really enjoyed it. This was another book club read, so I probably would not have read it if it was not part of book club. So this one, I'll make this one really quick because it's a romance. Like, what else could you say? Basically, we follow Alex, who is coming out of a abusive relationship with another ER doctor. So she's a doctor and her ex was a doctor too, or is a doctor, and he really belittles her. He does like really verbal abuse, and she's like driving somewhere. I don't really remember, but I will like try to piece it together. She's like driving somewhere and her car gets a flat, and this hunk of a small town guy, Daniel, comes and like, you know, fixes her car, and they talk, they exchange numbers, they end up having a one-night stand, I believe. And then her whole world is turned upside down. You know, she's like from the city, she's a city girl, she comes from money. Everybody expects her to make up with her ex, who is an ER doctor, because that's what is expected of her. And she's having this fun fling with Daniel, who is the rough, rugged, small town guy from this small town. And the town doesn't really have access to like healthcare and things like that. And so it's just a cute, cheesy story about her falling in love with rugged Daniel. The next book is Yellowface. Now, Yellowface, this is the first book that I read of R.F. Kuang. I do have Babel, but I have not read it yet, so that is on my list. But Yellowface, I love how this was written. I know there's some controversy about it, okay, which I feel like, and don't cancel me for saying this, but I feel like with a book like this, it's supposed to spark controversy. You know, it's supposed to be like a conversation about the publishing industry and how traditional media, whether that's like books, TV, films, they usually whitewash a lot of minority and ethnic roles, you know. So I felt like the commentary on this was really good and I loved it. Basically, we follow June, who is a author who is not doing well. Her books do not sell, And her best friend Athena is a Chinese American whose first book blew up, and Athena basically has the life that June wanted and always thought that she would have. And one day Athena dies, and so June just sees a manuscript on Athena's desk and she's like, I'll take that, thank you. And she just writes over it a little bit, puts her name on it, and publishes it as her own. And it's all about the story of how that one lie, it's a big lie, of taking another author's work, an author who is part of a minority in, you know, the publishing industry and a lot of industries. It's all about how that one lie kind of unravels June's life, and she has to like keep up and try to keep up with the lie about how she, a white woman, wrote this really in-depth book about Chinese laborers. And so it just follows that story. I really liked it. I thought it was funny. I thought the commentary was really good. And yeah, my next top 10 book of 2023 was Girl Forgotten by Karen Slaughter. This is my third book by Karen. Like I said, I am usually a thriller girl. I love thrillers. Only this year, because I am trying to write a fantasy book, have I started to consume fantasy works. But Karen Slaughter, anything by Karen Slaughter. If you love thrillers, if you love, they're a little on the, can I say gory? I guess I would say they're really descriptive. There's a lot of triggers in her books, but they're really descriptive, and oh, I just eat them up. I love them. I love that she's not afraid to shy away from that kind of gory, bloody vibes in her book, because I eat it up. Okay, Karen Slaughter is that girl. I love her. Okay, so Girl Forgotten is another dual timeline. 40 years ago in 1982, there was a young woman, Emily, who was found gruesomely, I think that's the word I was looking for, or earlier. It's not her thing, her books are not gory, they're kind of gruesome, you know. I think that was the word. Yeah, that was the word. So anyways, Emily is getting ready for prom, but back in 1982 she is like 7 months pregnant, and so her whole town has shunned her. They're like a close-knit kind of religious town, and she hasn't told anybody who the father is because she really doesn't know. But she doesn't know because she was a victim of SA. But she decides to go to prom. She's like, I'm gonna live it up, I'm gonna love my baby and leave this stupid town. And at the end of the prom night, she is discovered to be murdered. So Emily dies, and then 40 years later, we follow the story of Andrea, who is a U.S. Marshal. And Andrea, by the way, was a main character in another of Karen's books, Pieces of Her. So that's another thing. I love that book too. So Andrea is a U.S. Marshal now, and she is on a mission to figure out who murdered poor Emily. And so the book is all about her discovering all the lies and like terrible things that happened to Emily back in 1982. And it's a really good thriller book. There's a lot of twists, a lot of turns, as always, and I loved it. The next book of 2023 was The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. I love this. Like I said, I was a thriller girl. So, and I'm just now realizing there's like this one, Girl Forgotten, and Delicious Monsters. I think that's all of them. Are told in dual POVs. Apparently that's my thing too. Like when it comes to like thrillers, I love dual POVs. But so this one is all about back in 1977, there were 2 grisly murders of men, and the whole town, it's always a small town, you know, and there was a small town, and they all thought that this one eccentric young lady, you know, was the killer. But she got off. There was a big trial. She got off, and she's secluded herself in her family's like old home mansion, right? There's another, of course, there's another creepy mansion in this one, right? So fast forward to 2017. We follow Shay, who is like a true crime buff, and she just happens to cross paths with I forget her name, Beth. She happens to cross paths with Beth, who was the person, the woman accused of murder. And Beth is like, I've never told my story to anybody. She's getting older, so it's kind of like, this is the last thing I'm gonna do. Come to my house and I will tell you the story about back then, so you can put it on like your podcast or website or whatever you have. Shay agrees, but once she gets to the house, the creepy mansion, she's like, okay, this is a little creepy. And so it's just a story of discovering what really happened back in 1977, while in 2017 following Shay and her being scared to death in this creepy house. I will tell you, these two books, I did not read them at night. I'm a scaredy person. I'm a scaredy cat. I know that. There were just parts in this book where, especially this one, where I just had to close it and I said, I'll wait until the morning when there's light outside, because I was starting to hear noises and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't want to live in a creepy crawly house, so I closed this book at night. Then we have The Writing Retreat, which I loved. Again, of course I loved it. It's on my top 10 books. I will say I did guess almost every plot twist in this one. This one was, and this one is by Julia Bartz. This one was predictable, but I still liked it. You know, it was like the writing was still good. The story was still good. I wanted to read it, so I did. So this follows a group of aspiring authors who are invited to a secluded mansion. I'm never going to a mansion that is like creepy, crawly, in the middle of nowhere. I'm not doing it. I don't care if Beyonce invites me, okay? I know that something creepy is gonna happen there. So, well, it is Beyonce. I don't know. Okay. But this one follows a group of aspiring authors who are invited to a mansion in the middle of like a snowy town. And they're invited there by, I forget her name, but it's, okay, Rosa. So they're invited there by Rosa, who is like this best-selling author. And she takes one author from this writing retreat under her wing. And so at first it starts out as like, you know, a cool little writing retreat. They have to write a book, and by the end of it, Rosa will pick one of them to take under her wing as like an apprentice. Of course, creepy, crazy things start happening. Rosa is a little off her rocker. There's a big snowstorm. They can't get to civilization, and it's that kind of book, if you get what I'm talking about. But I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. It was a page turner. I finished it in like 2 days. The last top 10 book of 2023 for me was Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier. Jennifer is another author that is like Karen Slaughter to me. Her books are like real good thrillers, you know, fast paced. You kind of know what's gonna happen. You don't really know. She's gonna get you on some of her twists, but you can figure out some of it. This one follows the life of Marin, who is, or Marine. It's M-A-R-I-N. I want to say that's Marin. Maybe it's Marine. I don't know. But we follow Marin, who is like perfect life, husband, small child. They're rich, you know, wealthy in town, well known. One day her son gets kidnapped. Her whole life is thrown out of balance, of course. And then it's like a year later. The police have basically said, you know, there's nothing really else we can do. So she hires a private investigator who starts uncovering things. Her husband's doing some shady stuff. Her friend's doing some shady stuff. She just discovers that everything around her is not what it seems, but she will stop at nothing to get her son back. And so we have to figure out if her son is still alive, which is super sad, or not, because it is a year later. And you know, with child abduction cases, the longer they are abducted, the worse the odds. So that was my main thing with this book. I was like, please let this little baby still be alive after a year. But this was a really good book. Like I said, I was a thriller girl, so I think most of these are, like, half of these are thrillers. At the beginning of the year I read the thrillers, and then towards the end of the year I started reading the fantasies, so it's a good mix of that. I do really quickly want to talk about some honorable mentions, because as I said, I didn't read a lot of books in 2023, so those were my top 10, but I do still have some that I read that I wanted to talk about, because these are, this stack and that stack are all the books I read in 2023. So I read 16 books in 2023. Everybody else I've seen have read, did I say written or read? Well, I've only read 16 books last year, and everybody else I've seen have read like 3 times that, like 60, 80, 100. And so I'm like, but I was not a reader. I just got back into reading, so I'm not going to be hard on myself. The first honorable mention was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I did not put this in my top 10 because it was very predictable to me. It was very predictable. I'm going to show you. Page 125, I guessed the twist at the end. I guessed almost every one of them. It's a whole paragraph that I wrote, and I was like, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen. So it was very predictable to me. But it is a series, and I'm gonna finish the series because it wasn't a terrible book, you know. It was just, if I did not guess every single twist that was gonna happen, I would have loved this. And I'm gonna read the continuation of the series because I really did like the story and I want to see how it ends. So Red Queen, honorable mention. The next one, do not laugh at this. I take my dust jackets off when I'm reading them because it gets in the way, and then sometimes I misplace them and I don't know where this one is. But this one is Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong. She's another author that this is the first book I've read of hers, but she is basically known for These Violent Delights and Foul Lady Huntsman or Huntsman, Foul Lady Fortune, something like that. I know These Violent Delights. This is her first like adult book. I liked it. I will continue the series. There was just, this one was a lot of setup, you know. It was a lot of setup for the continuation of the series, so I won't fault her for that. I can tell she's a good writer. I can tell like she's really good with like her descriptions and stuff. Is my camera crooked? If my camera has been crooked this whole time, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to change it now because I can't really tell. Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I love the prose in this book. I really love the prose. It was really descriptive, really flowery a little bit. I think just for me, I'm discovering the type of reader I'm kind of becoming, and this was all about like a gothic. Oh, I didn't even say what these books were about. Red Queen was about there are two types of people. One have red blood, who are like the basics of the world, and the others have silver blood. They have all the powers. This girl, Mare, has red blood. She discovers she has powers, but she still has red blood. So everybody's like, how? And this is just a story of her trying to, you know, overthrow the monarchy that the silver people have over the red people. So that's what type of book this is. Immortal Longings follows, I forget her name, but it follows it's based in a city where people have the ability to jump into other people's bodies, and there's like a deadly game in this. Princess Kala, that's what it is. So we follow this princess who is like, she murdered her family, her parents, and she hates everything that the ruling class stand for, and so she wants to kind of murder them all and reset the balance of the city because there's a lot of poor people in the city, and she's just fed up with it. So she enters the deadly game because the winner of the deadly game gets to be honored by the king, and she doesn't want to be honored by the king. She wants to kill him. So that's what Immortal Longings is about. Starling House is about It's like a gothic. There's a house that is like a sentient being, and we follow the story of Opal, who's basically discovering all the creepy things about this house. I wanted to love this book. I really did. I wanted to love it, but I think we got more of like Opal's story and more of like the social commentary, which is fine, you know, like please use your books to comment on things in our society that need a spotlight on. So I get it. It was like pollution and how there's like this one ruling class and they're just ruling over this town that is dying, and they don't care because they're rich, you know. So I get it, but I wanted more of like the fantasy. I wanted more of the house. I wanted more of the lore, and I didn't get that in this book. And so I think that's why I was let down, because I was like, you know, you go into a book thinking it's gonna be something and it turns out not to be, and you're like, oh, okay. The Maidens by Alex, I can never say his name, sorry, so I'm not gonna try. But I absolutely love The Silent Patient. I loved it. I get to The Maidens, not my favorite. Not my favorite. And I'm not the type of person to like talk about books, you know, like negatively too much, because I get that authors pour their hearts and souls into writing, and I do believe that he wrote this during lockdown of COVID, so like of course, you know, he put his soul into it. But this didn't do it for me. Again, I went into this with expectations that didn't get lived up to, you know. Yeah, there's supposed to be a secret society of maidens. It's not a secret society. There's nothing there. I'm sorry, there's nothing there. The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. This was okay. This is one of the books that I absolutely loved, and it was so unique. And then the ending was not good for me. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really understand the ending, so maybe that's why, you know, maybe I'm a little slow, but I didn't really understand the ending, and so that kind of faltered. But this was really, like, I love the story of it, like the plot. I was like, how did she think of that? This is so good. But then the ending made it not so good. So honorable mentions. Okay, so those were my top 10 books of 2023 and some honorable mentions that I did read. I'm super excited to go into 2024 because I know that my reading taste has changed, and I'm looking forward to reading more books. I think life for me has settled down a bit to where I can read more, so I'm super excited about that. And I do think I want to do like a anticipated reads for 2024, so I'm gonna go look at all the books that are coming out and compile that, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.